Good morning, friends. You are listening to Journey Home Meditation, and this is the Morning Sit. Thanks for joining us this morning. Whether you're joining us live on Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, or whether you're listening to this at some other time on any of the podcast formats, I am still Michael, and I am still happy to be here, no matter which way you're hearing this today. If you are listening and you would like to give a shot at participating live in the Zoom, there is a Zoom link available on different Facebook platforms, but you could also email me, journeyhomemeditation@gmail.com, and I'll be able to get you the Zoom links for the morning programs. Good morning. Well, this is wrapping up the week for us here at Journey Home Meditation. We've kind of been sticking to a Monday through Thursday schedule. And I'm not sure how that actually came about, but, it's working. So I like things that work well. And this is one of them. Some days. Drinking a delicious cup of chai this morning. And it's very, very, very hot. So I have to be patient, which is not something I'm very good at. And maybe there's some deep philosophical lesson that we could have from that, but that's not what I want to talk about this morning. This morning I wanted to just read a little bit more poetry. Poetry has been something that has been a big part of my life for a very long time, and it's an important way for me to connect. There's these things that we do, right, to connect, but then there's these things that we imbibe in to connect. I love music, I do, but I've got friends who are, real serious record collectors, and they know all of the musicians on all of the tracks and the history and the stories of what happened in the studios and all this. And then I've got friends who visual medium of art, painters and illustrators, and they very similarly can, tell you an enormous amount about that craft. And they have this different relationship when they're looking at a painting than I do. Even though I have been a painter for a long time, and I am a big fan of art. I don't know if fan is the right word, but poetry is the place where I can connect in an entirely different way. And I really have been enjoying bringing poetry into these morning practices because of that. Because it's an important part of my practice. Because the practice, and this is one of the things I wanted to touch on today, something I've been thinking about. When I say the practice, it's funny because it's one of those things, the more you say it that way, the more it starts to sound like a little culty, which I don't mind. But it sounds like a multi-level marketing scheme, Oh, are you doing the practice? Capital P practice? No, I let my membership lapse, so I don't get to do the practice anymore. Things like this. But the practice for me is multi-leveled marketing. No, there's multiple aspects to what I consider to be my practice. It's another way of saying my work, but I like practice because practice indicates that this is something that we do regularly as a practice, and that there is an understanding that this is not perfection. And I don't even like the phrase practice makes perfect. I don't think practice makes perfect. Practice makes familiarity. And that's where I feel like I belong. I belong in the realm of familiarity. That's when I feel a sense of belonging, when I feel familiar. And the amazing thing about this practice, and again, I'm going to get to what the practice is, but it both allows us a level of familiarity, but also a consistent source of discomfort as we approach the things that we are intimately experiencing, but we are not familiar with. We don't have a language and a repertoire with, right? We can't rap with it. So the practice is, in a physical sense, sitting and closing your eyes and breathing and finding a level of awareness that goes beyond thought and beyond physical sensation of the body, but it goes beyond it by going to it and through it, right? So we're not ignoring the body, we're not ignoring the mind. This is not a level of dissociation. It's quite the opposite. It's recognizing how dissociated I can be in my awareness from my own physical body, from my emotional body, from my mental body. At any point in my day, I can be quite dissociated. I've learned how to do that through practice. I've practiced dissociation for a lot of my life. And this practice is a practice of returning. I was trying to find the word. This is a practice of returning. And whatever that may mean for you. And so the sitting aspect, the silencing the mind, calming the body, bringing the eyes closed and focusing totally on the breath. That is one aspect of this practice, and it's a very important aspect. But the other elements of this, of the practice, greater the practice, is to explore what is underneath the feelings that I find, what is driving them, what it is about them that I am holding on to so tightly, where my attachments are to them, and how those attachments have informed the decisions and the interactions and the relationships that I have to everything, both inside of my being and outside of my being, right? The people in my life, my relationship to my own reflection in the mirror, my relationship to my identities, as varied as they are, and the different roles that I play in the day, my work relationships, my hobbies, all of these different things, right? The practice is to understand what motivates my attachments and detachments and dissociations. So that's a second layer of my practice, right? That takes place in this ethereal realm because it's not exactly thoughts, but it's using the thought as an investigator, right? The thought becomes the investigator to go into the feelings, go into the history that we carry. But then the practice is further than that as well. The practice is how I then change and allow myself to change my behaviors and the way that I interact with the world. And it could be really big things like stopping drinking, stopping doing drugs, stopping having, uncontrollable sexual relationships, whatever it is for you that you are finding that is getting in the way of yourself, of coming into relationship with yourself. The practice is to then enact that, right? There's a level of action where we make those changes. And it could also be very small things, like one that I've been working on lately. And I say working on it because I'm not perfecting it and I'm not necessarily doing it, is the practice of not complaining. And I'm even trying to practice not excusing my complaining as venting. I'm working on processing instead of blaming or externalizing my frustrations. I'm working on going inside and seeing where it is that I'm connecting, where my frustrations are really living, and how it pertains mostly to the way that I view myself, mostly to the things that I do or do not want, that are not or are happening in the moment. It's really confusing language, but I think it makes sense. And poetry is a part of that practice, because for me, a poem allows me a moment, even if it's a 30-line poem, there might be one line in that poem that really connects me, draws me into one of those places inside of myself where I can meet myself and learn to fall in love. And whether that falling in love is falling in love with what I thought was a flaw, or falling in love with something that has been helpful in my relationships that I was unaware of in myself, or whether that thing inside of myself is something bigger that we call God, or that we call love, or that we call divinity. Falling in love with love, falling in love with God. And that's a touchy word for me. It's a touchy word because a lot of my life I spent really fighting against it. And I'm okay with that word now. I'm okay with a lot of things that I wasn't sure of before, when I did not have that connection inside of myself, a way to relate it to myself. If I couldn't relate to it, then I rejected it. And we do this a lot with things that we don't want to relate to. Parts of ourselves that we want to keep in the shadow, those parts of ourselves we don't want to exist but do, we reject them. And we oftentimes end up becoming so vehemently rejecting of those things that we take it upon ourselves to be the antithesis of those things, to fight against people who represent those things. And we do that instead of fighting internally. I'm learning more about Sufi philosophies, the varied many different philosophies, and being as it's, and excuse any ignorant comments that I make, please call me out on them, message me, and let me know if I say something that's not correct. But being that Sufism is a part of the Muslim cultures, right? The varied cultures of being Muslim. Sufism is one aspect of that. And in some of the teachings, there's the teachings about jihad. And this word, if you are an American who is unfamiliar with the Arabic language, which, something like a couple billion people, I think, speak. I'm not sure the exact number, but a large part of the world. And unfortunately, in this country, our media outlets have really tried hard to keep us fearful. I see it when I bring up different Muslim poets in different groups. If I just say, this is a poet, blah, 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 and read the poem, people think it's lovely. If I say, this is a Muslim poet who is approaching an idea that comes from Islam or comes from Muslim teachings, then I can see them shirk. I can see them sort of pull away, contract a little bit. I think it's involuntary mostly, but it's there. But jihad was a word that was thrown around a lot we were convinced that it means kill Americans. Well, jihad means struggle or war. It's a word we use a lot in our culture, right? We talk about war all the time. The war on drugs, the war with myself, the cola wars. I mean, we throw this word around, the fast food wars. So we throw this word around like it's nothing until we want to use it as a scare tactic, and then we pretend that it's a really big deal. But what I'm learning about in the Sufi teachings, there's two levels of jihad. There's what's called small jihad, and I don't know the exact Arabic word right now. I didn't write it down. I should have. Well, I could have written it down. But the small jihad is war. It's fighting. It's battles, right? Fighting with other people. The revolutionary wars, struggles, resistance fighting, whatever level that is. That's the small jihad. But the big jihad, the big war, that's the struggle with the self. That's the struggle to lose oneself so that God can appear. And it's such a beautiful idea. It's such a beautiful idea because a lot of times what we identify as the self is actually just this way in which we restrict our abilities to love deeper. I think if you sit with that for a minute, you might find that that's true. And so the notion of losing oneself being the greatest challenge, the greatest war, I can relate to that. That feels familiar to me. So that's now part of my practice. Part of my practice is the great jihad of allowing myself to lose myself. Yeah, I like that. And with that in mind, I'm going to let this poem take us into our practice, our physical practice this morning. This is a poem by Mary Oliver. I'll show that to the screen for anyone who's seeing. Oops, there we go. This is volume 1 of Mary Oliver's new and selected poems, and this poem is called Wild Geese. You can find Mary Oliver herself reading this poem on YouTube, but without being able to get permission from the estate. I can't get permission from Mary Oliver directly because she's no longer in her body. But I feel a level of permissiveness that every poet gives when they write a poem to allow us to share it. So, in lieu of sharing it in her voice, I'm going to share it in mine. The poem is called Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. allowing our bodies to relax into our meditation posture, that place of balance, of the least amount of stress or strain, softening the body. Soften your gaze or close your eyes entirely. Shift to breathe in a different way, through your nose into the bottom of your belly, and out of the mouth. Feel yourself release your breath entirely. Relax your shoulders, bring your shoulder blades together just slightly in the back, just enough to open the heart, open the chest. Lift the chin, slightly tilting your head upwards. Breathe in and release. Find your rhythm. Lose yourself in this breath. Forget your mind. Forget your ideas of who you are. Just exist swaying in this body, spinning on this earth, floating in this galaxy. You are not isolated. You are a part of the family of things. Feel yourself connecting. Inside of who you are, there is a deeper truth. But you have to get rid of who you think you are to see it. It's a clever mask we wear. Breathing in and breathing out. Stay in this place as long as you'd like. Take time. Make part of your agreement with time that you get to choose how much of it is yours. And live in this space. Thanks for being here this morning. Journey Home Meditation for the Morning Sit. Please reach out if you'd like to connect and talk about any of the things that I share here on this Morning Sit. I may very well have a special guest joining us next week. And if that works, as well as I hope it might, we'll be doing this more regularly with having people join in for conversation and meditation here at Journey Home Meditation. So thanks for being here. Keep listening. Thank you for liking, sharing, and reviewing. I love seeing reviews and hearing the ways in which your practice is shifting your experience on this ride, this journey home. Is that cheesy? It might be cheesy. I think I'm pretty cheesy. Okay. Have a great weekend. If you are in the Southern Oregon area, you can join us for Seva Saturday, where we're performing our Seva, our acts of service, by cleaning up our community here in Cave Junction and eating food together and celebrating this time that we have, as short as it is. So join us. Check us out at journeyhome.care. That's www.journeyhome.care. And with that, I am leaving for this moment. Adios.